Hey, this is Professor Homa. Welcome to part 3 of EX7 Info Form. And I just got finished with most of my HTML, and I'm going to be moving on to our CSS. And let's just see what we have so far. We have a very ugly looking form here with everything all cramped together. Even the submit button is before the zip code, and I didn't realize that I put that before here. So I want to make sure I copy and paste my label for my zip code. The zip code should actually be after. Should be after the state, so we have state and then zip code and then gender and then the submit button. So I want to make sure I have them in order. So let me refresh that. Now the submit's at the end, and again it's still cramped together, so we'll fix that. And even if you wanted to put you could put your input type in a P with a P tag. If you could make it a separate paragraph if you want. If you use the new version, you download it, you can grab this and drag it over here. So I'll put my submit button. I don't know if that's going to change anything. Let's take a look. And it moved it down a little bit, so it's okay. This is about where I want everything for now. Okay, so I'm going to start my CSS. And I have to make a new CSS file, so I'm going to go File, New, a bracket, asterisk, and just put CSS document. Sometimes it just helps as you get started. And I'll do File, Save As, and I'll make sure I save it with a .css in my same folder. So I'm going to call it ex7.css, just so you don't get it confused with some of the other ones that come up. Okay, now that shows up as a comment, and I can turn it off and on. So I'm going to start off first. I'll start a rule. I'll put a body rule on here. We'll just put a little margin around here. Now we could put a margin of like 2em for now, which is about 32 pixels. We'll put that for now so that whatever's in the middle, and if I just kind of save that and take a look at it, you can see what that does. It puts a little margin around there. I'm not going to worry about centering it yet. And that's just for the body. And again, we could center it with auto, but that's fine for now. So I'm going to go back here, and then I'm going to put some declarations in, or a rule for form. I don't have to put the name or anything, just it's the only form on the page. So a couple things I could put in here. I could put a width of the form, and I'll just start off with something real. I'll put in like 600 pixels for now, just to start. I'll give it a certain width. I'll give it a background color. I'll give it that light blue color. And remember, if you don't have a color there, I usually start with FFF, do a semicolon, and then right click, and then find a color out of the quick edit. I'll go to the blues here, make it a little cooler, pick a nice, very light blue color. And I'll start with that, so it has a light blue color. And I'll hit return. I'll put a border on it. Remember, for a border, you could put the thickness first. So I might put like 2 pixels. Then I may put solid. And then I may put like a dark blue. If you're not sure of a dark blue, you could just put in a number here. And then do a quick edit and just find a dark blue. I'll find this color first and maybe find a darker version of that, so I'm at least in the same family. And I'll choose that. So there's my dark blue color. And then I could even do a border radius. I'll scroll down here and look for radius. There's border radius, and I'll do it, I'm not sure how many, maybe I'll just try 24 pixels for now. Sometimes you can't tell until you look at it, so let me just save that and let me see if 24 is too much or too little. And that's okay. I probably want to maybe a little less. Maybe 20 is probably fine for that. So there's my border radius, and obviously I need some padding inside of here because everything's running right to the edge. So my form also put some padding in here. And you could use pixels or ems. And maybe I'll just put in 1.5 ems just to see what that comes out to. And you can see that's the padding coming around here. So things look okay so far. Now the important thing we're going to do is we're going to actually float these to the left. All these labels we're going to float to the left of everything else, and we're also going to give them a width so that we know, so that when they float, they'll kind of line up. So we're going to give all these elements a certain width. So what we're going to do here is what are those things? First of all, we have the form tag, but those things are actually the labels. So we're going to basically, they're going to be our form labels. So when we write our CSS, we could do this. I'll go back to my CSS, and you could just put label for now, or you could put form and then label because it's the label inside a form, but you could do this. And what we're going to do with these is we're going to put a width, and I think I started off with like 9em or something like that. You could use ems or you could use pixels, whatever you want to start with. Maybe we'll start with pixels. I'll make it 100 pixels to start and just see what that looks like. And I'll just save it and see what happens here. Okay, and you can see what's happening. Nothing's happening here yet in terms of the width of these. I'm going to try floating this to the left and just see what happens. And I'm just going to do a float left because that's what we plan on doing anyway. So this has to work with a float. So let's try this. Okay, and once we float it, it seems to recognize that width here, and it's moving things over a little bit. And that's kind of how we want it, except our spacing isn't set up right. We certainly need spacing in between, so we can actually put maybe a space after the labels. We can basically try this out, put a margin bottom, and see if like putting maybe 16 pixels or 1em after it works out. I'll save that and just see what it looks like so far. And now everything's breaking apart here, so obviously we have some issues to deal with here. So we'll work on fixing it. So let me just take that out for now. So that margin bottom is kind of screwing things up here so far. If I save that and I go back, now it looks okay. So there seems to be an issue here, and the problem is that it's trying to float these things all next to each other when we do that. So one other thing we're going to put in here is we're going to put in a BR declaration or a rule for the BR, and we're just going to put clear left so that whenever it hits that, it's going to clear the break. So let me try that and see what that does. That shouldn't do anything here, but if we tried to let's try to put a margin bottom on here again. And I'll just put 1em again on the bottom, and let's see what happens here. And that seems to work okay. It seems to be spreading it out now. It's using that width, and it's spreading these things out, and each time it's actually breaking, so it's not trying to put anything to the left of it to the next. So I could even put that a little bit. I'll spread it out just a little bit more. If we have 1em, maybe just try 1.3em and see how that works. So we're putting a margin bottom on the label, and that's looking okay for now. Now also, if we wanted to right justify these labels, we could try doing that. Now we may have some issues with space. We may need a little padding on the right, or a little addition on the rights, but I'll just try right here and just see what happens. I'll see what these look like when they're adjusted to the right. And they look okay, except there's too much space. So we can either put some more padding to the right of these. We could put padding right. And maybe, well, yeah, we'll try that, and we'll put padding right, and we'll put like, maybe just like 10 pixels. We'll try that. And I'll refresh it, and there, it's actually starting to look like the way we want it. We have some issues here with the radio buttons, which we could fix. We could use styles to fix that or tweak it a little bit, but for now, everything looks pretty good, except we have to move this over. Now, one of the things we could do, there's a couple things we could do to line it up properly. We could put a label on here that actually doesn't really have anything. We could put like a non-breaking space in a label and try to move that over, because it may be hard to line that over. So let me actually try to do that. We're going to try to do that with our HTML. So the idea is put another label here. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put in a label, and I'll just try to stick with what I did before. I'll just put a label 4, and I got to put equals, and I'll just put submit. And I won't put anything inside the label. I'll just do it like the other ones, and I'll just put like a non-breaking space. I'll put the ampersand and put NBSP and a semicolon, and just see what happens. Hopefully it'll spread it out and it'll move it over. I'm not sure if it's going to work because I didn't do that way ahead of time, but let's just see how it works. So I'm going to save it, and then I'm going to go to and I'm going to refresh it over here and just see if it moves it over, and that actually worked. That was kind of a little trick to do that. It's not always the most recommended way to do that, but I just put a non-breaking space inside here, and I'm just curious if I don't put anything in here. If I just had nothing in there, will it work? Probably not, but let's check it. It's always good to check out your code. And I'll refresh it, and actually, I think it still works. Let me just save this, refresh it. But it's always, if you're ever going to have nothing inside it, I would always put a non-breaking space. So I'm still going to put that in there. I'll still put a non-breaking space in here. And that's a little trick just to move that over. It treats treats kind of like an empty label. So I'm going to do that, and that works for now for what we're doing. And it moves submit, and it lines it up. So even if we change these, it'll keep moving that over. So everything looks okay so far. If we check it out here, everything's lined up. We could certainly change other things about it. We could change the font. We could change where everything's lined up. We could change spacing. But for now, we're going to stop here, and we're going to submit this as an exercise, and then we'll move on to the next step of actually processing the form.